You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss, and today we are hiking up into the mountains. We are going to talk more beer with the stars of Boone, Appalachian Mountain Brewery, and we have the owners, the founders, Chris Zieber and Nathan Kalishek. Welcome, gentlemen.
How's it going, buddy?
It's going.
So we've got you guys on Zoom and then in studio because it's kind of nice that we actually have people that can meet in studio too. We have Kevin Tyndall. Now, Kevin, you work with Appalachian Mountain Brewing. What is your official title?
Home market manager. So I run the Triangle and then the eastern part of North Carolina.
All right. So you're the guy that gets us the beer.
Yes.
And then one of my good buddies that works with me over at Y Hill, Zach Rogerson. You're here in studio. You're here because A, you're a beer nerd, and
True.
Two, you know a little thing about brewing. You're the bar manager at Y Hill and the cellarman, which I guess, what is a cellarman?
So cellarman basically does a lot of the heavy lifting for the brewer. So I help him carry the bags up the steps and kind of stand around and just ask questions and help him brew our typical brews.
You carry the brewer's bag.
Yeah, basically.
You're the brew caddy.
I get to
Brew
watch
caddy, that would be a better word. Yeah, I like that one.
I get to watch him do his magic and say that I helped with the beer whenever I'm selling it at Y Hill. So
Nice.
that's the big part.
Well, and then perspective as well is that you went to App State and you spent a lot of time up in the mountains, and so A&B was close to your college years.
Oh yeah, so A&B opened my junior year of college, and I spent a lot of time there. And every time I go back up to Boone, I spend a lot of time there.
Well, it's one big happy family. So, Nathan, Chris, welcome to the show. We really appreciate it. We've been, I've known Kevin for a good while now, since I pretty much had moved to North Carolina. And through his travels, he's always been a beer man that I've known. But when he started working for A&B, we had talked, like, man, let's get you guys on the show. And that's just been a conversation we've had for years. And then finally, today, we made it happen. The thing that makes me most excited is that, as we were mentioned before we even got on the show, is Matt and I, for the show, have not delved deep into the mountains of the western side of North Carolina. Like, I've visited with my family. We've gone to Blowing Rock. We've gone to Boone. We've checked out the whole area, and it's amazing. It's beautiful. But we've really not talked to anybody specifically that runs a business in that area. So we'd really love to maybe even just kind of start there to kind of paint the picture a little bit. Nathan, yeah, what is it? What's it like out there? Help us understand the region.
Oh man, West North Carolina is a beautiful place. I gotta say, man. I was born and raised in Asheville, and moved up to Boone in 2007. So I definitely call Western North Carolina my home. There's tons of access to the outdoors up here, as you can tell by my background. Painted by the rolling hills. But yeah, I mean, there's everything from
but you could be like in
biking,
Taiwan
hiking.
and still have that background. Like you've got a virtual background. You're cheating.
Well, that's true. But trust me, this is a shot from Ben. But yeah, no, there's tons of access up here to the outdoors. I mean, we have a thriving, nonprofit community scene up here. We have, just really great things to do in the food and beverage scene as well. It's definitely not as prolific as Asheville, but we're making our space for sure.
Yeah. So what brought you to Boone? Why do you leave Asheville to go there?
Oh man, I had to get out of the city. Went to App State, so I'm also App State alumni. Was heavily into the sciences when I was up here, and my junior year, I kind of got taking these high-level chem classes, and there's a fermentation science course that they offered. And, we'd been home brewing for a while as a family. I was 19 at the time, and, I just decided to go full in on the fermentation science course, and ended up being the resident school brewer for the last 2 years that I was in school. And, I could have gone down a lot of different roads, and ended up meeting Sean and calling Chris into action to come help start a brewery. So,
Wait, the resident school brewer, that's a way to make friends.
That's
right.
Seriously.
Oh yeah.
At 19?
Yeah. When I was 21, I was officially serving at the beer festivals. And, if anybody was going to the festivals back in 2011 in North Carolina, it was the Wild West of beer festivals. So it was still open season, to say the least.
So do you get a freshman to be your cellarman then when you're the head resident school brewer? Like carry your bag?
No, I'm basically doing all the grunt work, washing the 5-gallon carboys, and we're operating a pretty upgraded 15-gallon stovetop setup up there. So it was it's definitely not like the fermentation science program that they have now. They have a 3-barrel system and distillation system set up. Viticulture is pretty pronounced, and working with all these other fermentation goodness they have going on. Definitely the preliminary years.
So when you're done with App State, did you have offers on the table? Were other breweries looking for you and be like, come be our head brewer?
Oh, that's great. No, not at all. I was working at the local Mellow Mushroom bartending, and ran into Sean and Stephanie Spiegelman, and all of a sudden I'm on the phone with Chris. He's in Majorca, surfing the waves, living the good life. And I was like, hey, there's no brewery in Boone right now. I want to come help start a brewery. So the rest from there it was pretty fast.
Okay, wait a second. Yeah. Chris, so you're surfing the waves in Majorca, okay, an island in Spain, and then you all of a sudden decide to come back to Boone, North Carolina to start a brewery. That's a point of validation for the mountains right there, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a tough choice there between two of the most beautiful areas in the entire world, and chose to start a brewery and come to Boone. And like Nathan said, the rest is history. But yeah, I also grew up in Western North Carolina. Nathan and I actually went to rival high schools in Asheville. So, that was always fun for the soccer games and whatnot growing up. But went down to Chapel Hill for university. And then after I graduated there with environmental science degree, which is, very similar to what Nathan was doing with a lot of his chemistry and biology, which is all really important in brewing, obviously. I went to Majorca. And so I was teaching English in Majorca and going out and swimming in the ocean every day. And that was fantastic. But the idea of starting a brewery, coming back to home to be closer to family, really impressed me. And, so we did that, came back, started doing some construction, and opened the brewery, a year later, maybe.
Well, let's talk about that idea of building the brewery, because you can do it many different ways. You can, build your business to be just as small as possible. I know, like talking about Y Hill, we have a 7-barrel system. It's a very small, tiny. It's the acoustic guitar of breweries. I always say there's not a lot of bells or whistles on that machine there.
We get the job done though.
Yeah. Oh, you still can. Hey, Eric Clapton can play the hell out of that acoustic guitar. So you just get somebody to do it right, and you can make anything you want. But when you are building this brewery, what was your mindset as far as the size, the scale? Like, what did you want from the beginning? What was that mentality at the time?
The mentality at the time was really that there's, no brewery that existed in Boone. When Cottonwood was open back in the day, almost, 14, 15 years prior to us, past that, Boone had passed these like ridiculously antiquated zoning laws that restricted any breweries to exist. And so we actually had to find a property and then go in front of the town council to get a conditional district rezoning on the property to even, entertain the idea of us opening. So, I mean, just getting open for us was a huge struggle. From there, talk about a seven barrel system. We're operating at the pub on a 10 barrel kit that's pretty much as manual as you can get it. So, it's a JV Northwest system that commissioned in, I think it was 96, Chris.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're big fans of being the Eric Clapton behind the acoustic. We like that.
So what was the size of your brewery when you first started off? How big was it?
Yeah, we had 10 barrel fermenters, 4 10 barrel fermenters, a couple of bright tanks in the cold room, and 10 barrel, like I said, 10 barrel brew house, all shoved into a 1,200 square foot space.
Oh, wow.
Not very lot.
Yeah, that's not tiny, but that's like medium, but in a very small space. So
in a very, very small space.
Definitely.
Yeah. But you're able to pump out a decent amount. Now, all I've ever known is that you guys had cans, and you've always had cans from my perspective. And so when did that get into, because that's a big decision to just say we're going to start doing cans, because that requires a very strong sales team, that requires a very strong market presence to take over. I mean, you can't just casually throw cans out into the market without expecting a huge loss. So how did that factor in, and when did you start getting into that category?
I think it was kind of a nonchalant decision for us, at least at first. I mean, we started canning out of our, like I said, our square footage. We got a Wild Goose canner 3-head filler back in the day and tried to, basically piece on to the side. And early on, we started, I guess after the first year, we had tripled our fermentation capacity and, buying all these new tanks. And we're trying to find another facility where we can kind of warehouse all of our packaged products, because, we really didn't have any space to store it in a warehouse at the time. And, during that first year, that's the first time that we entered the Startup Brewery Challenge that was held by CBA, Craft Brewers Alliance, based out in Portland. And that was a very, very early interaction with those guys that, we realized really quickly that we were going to run into a bottleneck almost immediately.
Well, before we get into CBA and your relationship with them, I do want to take a quick moment to talk about our friends at the Folks Foundation, who are champions of all good things crafted in North Carolina and the folks that make them. Whether you're way up in the mountains in the far western reaches of North Carolina, or you come all the way down to the Outer Banks, they are always supporting artisans that craft in this area, like brewers or artists, musicians, podcasters, whatever you see. They also have a journal online that comes out quarterly. They make a print of it too. It is a fantastic, beautiful book. So if you ever want to learn more about North Carolina and the artistry that comes on from it, they have this fantastic journal that comes out. You can go to www.folksfoundation.org or follow them on Instagram at Folks Foundation. Check out, see what they're doing. They always have something new and fantastic happening, whether it's their new album they released, the Carolina Quarantine Project, where they got a bunch of artists that wrote songs well sheltered in place. They released it on vinyl, or they're just opening up a small general store in New Bern that has all local North Carolina products for sale. It is great. It is completely North Carolina based. They are the Folks Foundation. Check them out.
So back to you guys and back to Boone. You guys are not just, your average small little mom and pop brewery, so to speak. I mean, very early on, you were donned with some GABF awards. For those that are listening that don't know, it's a Great American Beer Festival, which is pretty much the highest compliment you can get. Talk about that. I mean, I can't imagine that was an intention, but that came pretty early on.
Yeah, we were... we've been producing beers all across the spectrum for a long time, and really been trying to hone in on a couple of them. And we definitely use the pub as our outlet. Chris, you want to speak to our GABFs?
Yeah, sure. I feel like a lot of times people think, like some brewer just gets this like light bulb, and then all of a sudden they just have this fantastic recipe. I think what Nathan was just saying, like, how many blondes did we go through, Nathan, before we finally brewed blonde?
Yeah, it was something like 21 iterations.
Dozens of iterations or something like. So, that was the first one that we won a medal for. We won gold for our Boone Creek Blonde Ale.
They're talking about beer,
still,
folks.
Part of our...
Yeah, not ladies.
Part of our core lineup. And, so, win that medal, just, I think, going in as really young brewers, we were flying by the seat of our pants. We were brewing everything that came to mind. I think, Golden Nugget and Guard Your Beard was mentioned earlier. These two beers that are just totally off the wall styles, but we definitely were trying to do iteration after iteration, really dial in, these kind of core styles that are going to be the ones that get out into the market and get onto the shelf. And blonde was definitely the first one there. And, the same story for Not an IPA, which won silver in the IPA category. So I think that, having, there's only, a handful of winners for that category every year, and we took home silver. That's probably one of my biggest accomplishments, I think, at the brewery, as far as accolades goes. To have 350 other breweries submit entries, and then we're the one that gets silver is really great.
It's amazing. I have to ask, does that, Max and I talk about this, like, let's say we won a James Beard Award for a media award, and while that would be really nice for us, I think it would be great validation for what we do. I'm not sure if that would change our business. Like we'd have sponsors knocking down our door and be like, we want to give you our money to be, advertised on your podcast. However, is it the same in beer? When you win a GABF award, does that change business-wise? Like, do people come calling before that you would not have expected?
Personally, I just think it's a validation on your craft. I think that, the iterative process is definitely there. But, I mean, the same year that we won silver for IPA, we won gold for lager. So, the American lager, and that's, two different categories, two different styles that are, infinitely different. And everything from their yeast strain to, they're just their foundation, their core. So, I mean, I think that at least for me, it's just, when you're surrounded by all of these fantastic brewers across the country, who've really been, trying their hardest to be as creative and as impactful on the craft scene as possible, just being validated from that aspect is good enough, whether the average craft drinker knows what a GABF medal is it's probably not that many people know.
Sure. But I guess business wise in some aspect, and Max, you alluded to this earlier, that it did affect your business in a positive way because CBA came calling, Craft Brew Alliance. Right.
Yeah, Craft Brewers Alliance. So that happened actually a little bit before we entered the Startup Brewery Challenge. I believe it was in like a year after we opened in 2014. And so, it was just this Startup Brewery Challenge. And you had to be, under a certain size to be able to, to participate every year. And we entered that. We ended up winning, and we ended up going out to Portland to brew at their facility, and kind of met everybody and saw what they were about, saw that, we definitely needed a partner to help us distribute, like you said, intentionally building we found out quick. I think the really hard thing about the high country or, Boone up here is that, within a 30-50 mile radius, there aren't a lot of really big towns. When you're in Asheville or Raleigh or Charlotte, your self-distribution footprint is a lot. You can get a lot more tap handles for one person rather than somebody driving, 2 hours one way and back all in the same day. So it was very evident to us from the very beginning that we needed help, and that's where CBA stepped in.
Yeah, so Craft Brewers Alliance, or CBA, they also, I believe they own Red Hook, or at least at the time, Red Hook and Widmer Brothers. I think Kona from Hawaii was a part of their portfolio, as well as a few others.
Yep.
And so what we're talking about is that you guys effectively sold 100% of the company to CBA, and then, but as far as operations were concerned, kind of still retained the same business ops. Is that fair to say?
We didn't actually end up selling the company until 2018. So, I mean, we operated as a wholly owned company for 5 years, basically just operating with them with a master distribution agreement. So we're, wholly aligned with their distributors and sales force. So that was the main partnership from the get-go. And then, as we started to grow, it just made more and more sense the more that we were aligned as a company. Having them as partners to help us, enter the next phase was a no-brainer.
Well, yeah, and let's get into that too. I just while you were speaking, we cracked your low and hazy IPA, and we've all been consuming it while we've been talking, which is delicious.
Well, it's sessionable.
Yeah, I love that. You just throw session in front of everything, and then it gives you license to just drink copious amounts of it. You're like, yeah, it's a sessionable. That's it. But
honestly, guys, I want to hear an opinion. Like, I don't like a lot of low-cal IPAs out there. Honest opinion? What do you guys think?
I'll just say I totally wanted to crush that. I have a doctor's appointment later today, so I can't really imbibe much. But I definitely wanted to drink that whole thing. And I was like, I could totally this is exactly, I think, sessionable. Like, that's something I want to have with lunch, and I want to have many of them. Like, because it's just refreshing, but also thirst quenching.
Oh yeah, I did. I poured about 2 or 3 ounces in my glass, and it's gone. I swallowed it, and no, it's great. Nice. I think Kevin and we were discussing this beer a couple weeks ago when it came out, and he was like, "What do you think?" I think this is going to crush. I think people are going to go nuts. As Zach and I know, any IPA that we put on over a Wye Hill, it just is gone. Like to say it's the best selling style of beer is an understatement. It's like the best selling times 4 before even the next beers go.
Yeah, we'll run through 7 barrels in about 3.5 weeks. So we're pumping out some IPAs right now.
Yeah, and that's just all on premise, awesome. on our premise. But
but this is low cal, kind of right.
It's 4.1% alcohol, so that's good. And then calorie wise, I don't know. To be honest, I've never looked at the calories on a beer.
I think it's in 126, but we weren't really interested in putting the calories on the can. 126 is considered low, but a lot of the low cal beers that are coming out right now are 106, 105.
Because I guess that's probably the biggest, possibly that might be the biggest detractor from someone drinking an IPA is it's too heavy in alcohol, or it's too big, it's too hot, it's too everything, right? Like IPAs tend to just be a lot in one small can or pint. And so the idea here is to kind of take away some of that aspect. What is the process? Like what do you do differently than instead of just making a full board punch you in the face IPA? How is this different?
I love the story of Low and Hazy. It's actually, when we took home that silver for the GABF, we were out there, and obviously, we take a trip to Yakima every year to do hop selection, and some buddies from Yakima Chief came over and we're like, "Oh man, congratulations! We picked or we're having this fresh harvest of Idaho 7. We'd love to, send you guys some when you get back." And so, of course, I said, absolutely. And on Monday, we got back. I started brewing that day, and there was, 100 pounds of fresh picked, less than 14-hour-old Idaho 7 hops waiting for me. And, we threw those in with a little bit of Citra, and mostly in the dry hop end. And this, we called it the Freshy Fresh, and it was this just amazing hop profile that you're smelling that Low and Hazy right now coming out. And, when we decided to kind of compress it down into a style that's, sessionable, it definitely takes a lot of balance and knowledge of your malt builds and your mash temperatures and hop hop additions that you're doing. But it's definitely not an easy thing to achieve. I think a lot of the low cal IPAs that I've had are underwhelming, and definitely wanted to make an IPA that stood out, stood against an IPA that you can, 7%, 7.3, whatever.
I'll say that it does. Like I did find myself being like, thinking it for 1 second, this is a low calorie beer or a low alcohol beer. I just thought like, that's delicious. It's crisp and hoppy and like, give me more. So yeah, I think that's kind of what you want.
Yeah.
So what are we trying now?
So we just switched over, changed gears a little bit for the gold medal winner, the American Lager.
Ooh.
And flavor profile, like we took an absolute hard right into a different type of category.
But this is the now, right? This is the trend. Lagers. I mean, this is like this is what we're supposed to be drinking.
Come on,
next,
lagers
right?
aren't trends. Lagers aren't trends. Lager is life, dude. We got
Lager is life.
Around for been around for a lot longer than us. That's for sure.
Yeah, lagers are like the beginning of beer, right?
Yeah, but it's like what's old is new again, right? I mean, of course we don't think of like, Budweiser, that's a lager, but then you get back to it, and people for the last 10 years have been drinking everything that's cool and next, and now it's like, hey, guess what's cool and next, but has really been around forever. Lagers.
I couldn't agree more, man. I love the American lager that we have. It's a full pronouncement of not only the yeast profile, but the quality of ingredients that we're using. There's lagers. There's really nothing to hide behind. IPAs you can kind of disguise and put away and tuck your flaws into the corners, into the depths. But lager, I think, is something that you really have to know what you're doing, or else you're gonna find your flaws pretty quickly.
Yeah, I always think about with lagers, and I was thinking about this just now. If you're making an IPA or even just like an ale in general, you can throw a bunch of things in it. I mean, from chocolate to mint to persimmons to mushrooms to whatever. There's just like a limitless amount of a variety that you can put in. But I don't see that type of trend happen with lagers, right? Is that because it would be like to go against tradition, or is it just not work to throw in like fruit into a lager? And maybe I'm just wrong. I mean, there are fruited lagers, I guess, but I don't see them very often.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that the lager category, and Chris, you can speak to it, but I think the lager category is we're seeing it at its infancy. As we've seen, IPAs expand into these 10, 15, subcategories that you can, subpart all these styles into. I think the lager, that there are a lot of styles already, but I think that I think it's, the craft scene is definitely at its birthplace.
So at the very heart of it, and I know we've talked about this on the show, but just to reiterate, so it's really all beers are ales and lagers, no matter how often you break it down, right? And then the main difference is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but lagers are bottom fermenting and ales are top fermenting. Is that right?
Zach is waving his head back and forth. The cellar master, the cellarman, what are you saying?
The brew caddy.
How it's always broken down for me, and obviously there's some experts in the room that you guys can correct me.
No, we want you to say it.
Yeah.
So
speak to the layman.
How I always break it down when I'm giving tours at Y, or if I'm talking to our servers who are definitely not beer enthusiasts, is ales take about 2 weeks, and that's how long they ferment and how long before they're ready. And then lagers can take anywhere from 6 to 10 to 4 months. It kind of all depends. Like we had Slow-Mo, which is our Pilsner at Y Hill, and that sat for 4.5 months, and that was why it's called Slow-Mo. And it took a long time to come out. And
so that brings me to my next question. Pilsner is a style of a lager.
Yes.
Yeah. And why would you put Pilsner on a label versus why would you put lager on a label? Chris, you wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the technical definition is the strain of the yeast. So there's two different genetic species that are used, and one is a top fermenting yeast, one is a bottom fermenting yeast, and that kind of gets into that time span. If it's really vigorous and active, you're going to have that yeast kind of circulating in a tank and flowing towards the top. So that's going to decrease that fermentation time. But then there's also there's some yeast strains that kind of fall in between. So, for the consumer, I really think that when you say lager, you mean something that, it's more of a stylistic thing. Like you can brew a crisp, delicious ale that, tastes like a lager. It's just depending on how you brew it. So especially, getting back to the fruited thing, I think one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of craft lagers and they're just coming around is that longer fermentation time and, how much time is it spending in the tank and what's how profitable is it if you can brew twice as much beer, in a 4-week beer versus a 2-week beer. But, now that we're getting to that place where, the whole craft beer scene is a little bit more mature, I think you're going to see a lot more lagers coming out because, people have that time to sit on a beer for 4.5 months. Like I'd love to taste, do a lager that's that long. Normally even our longest ones are like 2 months, and what does that do? Well, there's a lot of chemical changes that happen when you have a beer sitting cold. The yeast continue to metabolize some different compounds and you get this other flavor. And this is kind of how harkens back to that traditional lager production in, caves back in the day in Europe, before refrigeration. So definitely some interesting things to expand on in the lager realm for sure.
What also is interesting about that, though, is from a fermentation perspective, one would think that something that because correct me if I'm wrong, but lagers are typically lower in ABV than ales, especially when you get into IPAs. But if you could ferment something so quickly, I would think you would have a lower ABV versus when it's taking longer, you would think the ABV would grow for a lager. Is that wrong?
Oh man, we're getting technical, boys. Yeah, I mean,
Teach us. It's the yeast, right? I think, it's the different type of organism.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. So, Saccharomyces and Uvarum. I mean, it depends on. There's definitely have you guys ever heard the story of the Bock and the ice Bock?
No.
Have you ever heard that?
Please.
So the old German tale goes is, this monk is brewing their annual Bock, in the winter time. And they're basically moving these casks to lager, from the fermentation house to the cellar house. And he's rolling it across the courtyard. And, it's a snowy winter day. And, he's tired and drunk. So he actually just passes out in the middle of the courtyard with the cask full of Bock, and the brewmaster comes by and sees him and gets extremely pissed off and just kicks a hole through the bottom of the cask and says, "You fucked up this beer. You got to drink it." And the guy and the monk goes down and starts drinking this iced Bock. This basically distilled Bock, and this is amazing. And there's Ice Bock was born. So, I think that, or so the story goes.
I would definitely agree that that's how it really went, because all good things happen by total random accident, and usually while someone's kind of drunk. So. Yeah, that's what is it, the whole Dom Perignon champagne story is all kind of a mistake too, and the guy had a hole in the barrel and it carbonated by accident or something. And
wasn't Sir Isaac Newton drunk and fell asleep and an apple fell on his head, right?
Yeah. So, we've all come up with some pretty good ideas, a little buzz on, right?
Drink more.
That makes sense. We are now on to the next beer. We're drinking some blonde right now, which you alluded to in the beginning. I do want to ask Zach, before we got on, as a college kid, you were talking about Golden Nugget, and I think the blonde was brand new. As just a guy,
oh man,
that is just drinking as a college freshman, or actually you were a junior when they opened.
Yeah,
these. was this a beer that had a lot of ping pong balls in it at some point?
Well, guys, correct me if I'm wrong. This used to be Honey Badger, correct?
The blonde that you're drinking right now?
The blonde.
Yeah.
You
So,
got it.
So it used to be called Honey Badger, and it definitely was one of the first, might have been the first craft beer that I ever had. So definitely like going from drinking Busch Light and being introduced to the craft brew scene by Honey Badger or Boone Creek Blonde, it definitely is an easy transition to a better beer.
We just tried it right now.
Awesome, man.
Like, okay, so the blonde, as much as I know something about liquor and wine and all that, I intentionally like to not know enough about beer so that I can just simply enjoy it rather than have to think about it all the time. I like the ignorance and the bliss that comes along with it when it comes to beer. But explain a little bit, just very broad strokes, the difference between a blonde, because a blonde is an ale, right? It's not a lager.
Right.
It's an ale, but it does drink very light and crisp that like a lager drinker would probably go more towards a blonde if they were getting an ale. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think that Chris said it kind of earlier when it goes to, what tools and do you have in your repertoire when you're actually diving into certain styles. Ales are predominantly what the craft scene operates on, just because of their turn time in the tank and easiness to ferment. So I think that a lot of the American styles that were born actually try to emulate that old world brewing that has existed for so long, and like trying to how can we make a solid, drinkable, sessionable ale that stands up to a lager. I think that blonde definitely does a great job of that. It's definitely more full-bodied than the lager. It definitely has more zest, orangey, tropical notes on the nose, but man, it drinks clean and crisp. A lot of that crispness actually comes from having more fermentable sugars, adding that honey in. I think that honey would make it sweeter, but in reality, it actually dries it out to help that crisp finish that you're looking for.
But there was also, and by the way, my wife is going to be upset to hear this, but I just discovered I like blondes.
Oh boy!
So, but on the blonde though, there was like a textural thing, and it was almost like honey, like it was glycol or something like that. That was different than the other beers. Is that due to the honey, or is there something else that is creating that textural sensation?
Yeah, I would definitely attribute that to the honey. I don't know. Glycol is interesting. I've never actually put glycol in my mouth, so I don't know what the mouthfeel of glycol is.
Well, it's like a whiny term, like when something has like a super silky texture. You see the tears on the glass. It's like glycerin.
Right. Matt gets wacky on the weekends, man. Right. He'll do whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I love it.
Just going through your beers. Just to this point, we just opened the Longleaf India Pale Ale, and I'm just smelling it right now. I will say, contrary to a lot of North Carolina breweries, when I first moved here, I said, I like these beers, but I feel like one brewery's selections are not very different from each other. Like, it doesn't really matter what they're brewing. There is kind of like this constant through line of flavor profile. And being a West Coaster, I was a total elitist. I'm like, no, and on the West Coast, when you're making these beers, they all are wildly different from each other, and that's kind of the beauty of it. I'm giving you a compliment, though, because just going through these beers right now, they are so distinguishingly different from each other that even smelling this Longleaf India Pale Ale compared to the original session Low and Hazy IPA, they are worlds apart, and you've been able to craft unique flavors for your own beers, and that should be an obvious no-shit stance to have on beer, but it doesn't always work that way.
Not easy.
You get a lot of breweries, and you're just like, it reminds me of, I've mentioned before, but it's like the Simpsons episode when he goes to the Duff Brewery, and he's got like Duff Light, Duff Dry, and Duff, and they're all filtered down from one tank into one tap, and it's like, because it's all the same shit. But that's not the case here. You guys are really doing a great job of forming unique expressions for all of your beers. So maybe walk us through a little bit of the Longleaf India Pale Ale, since that's all in our glass right now.
Oh man, the Longleaf is definitely one of my favorites. It's definitely not what I would consider a modern West Coast style IPA. It's definitely more on the bitter side, more of a malt backbone. There's, that dank, piney, resinous hop. It really, throws you back to kind of like an old school, quote unquote, traditional West Coast IPA. And that's, I think that we started calling it our East Coast IPA just because it's an ode to, the North Carolina State Toast. We're the only state in the union that has an actual state toast. So
that's right.
Back in college, we used to say it all the time. Here's the land of the longleaf pine, the summer land where the sun does shine, where the wheat goes strong and the strong go great. Here's the down home, the Old North State.
Word.
I mean, how much fun is that? So we're like, let's put that in a can and let's make it piney, let's make it resinous, and here's the Old North State. So.
Is that just a product of like North Carolinians being such drunks that we had to have our own toast?
100%.
Right. That's 100%, right?
Hope so.
Other countries just say Prost or L'chaim. No. We have like 45 words we got to put together just to say we're happy drinking.
It sounds like something you have to learn.
Do it.
Yeah, it sounds like something you have to learn for your fraternity, pledging.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We definitely learned this in college.
All right, let's get a little bit more back to the business part for a second, just because I'm curious about that. And a few weeks ago we had your, I don't know what they're called now, your partners, your colleagues, business partners. We had Wyatt Dickinson on. Your sisters?
Sister Brewery.
Sister Brewery.
There we
go. I guess so. That's Sister Brewery, yeah.
Speaking, of course, of Wicked Weed.
Wicked Weed, yes, of course, thanks. And now, of course, so you guys are all under the same umbrella, Anheuser Busch InBev. So walk us through how that happened for you guys and what that's going to mean for you going forward.
Yeah, as we discussed, we sold the company in 2018 to Craft Brewers Alliance, really to, help support us grow the brand and getting all of these distinctively awesome liquids to as many people as possible, and really trying to, grow our distribution and grow the company, grow what our ethos is, and try to, spread that as much as possible. Craft Brewer Alliance has been involved with AV InBev for, I think, almost 15 years now. So they were minority shareholders. I think they own 31 plus something percentage.
31.4
of the
at the time
of the company. The BA says that you can't be a part of the BA unless you own, I think it's 31.3%.
Oh, interesting.
So that was a.
He gave himself 0.01
I wonder why that is.
Leeway.
Yeah, they couldn't go 32. That'd have been too much. We're like, no, I'm going to go by the letter of the law.
Yeah. So I wonder why that is. But yeah, I mean, they've been involved for a long time, and I think that, the powers that be, there's a lot of synergies. I'm really excited to be a part of the family. I mean, I think that, trying to do what we do as a business and continue making the products that we can as fresh as possible, using awesome ingredients, great artificial ingredients, try not to cut corners. I mean, it's going to allow us to do everything that we want to do and more. Sometimes you just get to a point where it's hard to take the step to grow your own business. Sometimes you need some partners to step in to help you.
Did you get to have that, like, Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts, Richard Gere moment when Anheuser Busch came in and, like, you went on like an awesome shopping spree on Rodeo Drive? And I mean that metaphorically.
Not yet.
I'm not like, I'm being kind of for real. I'm in more of like the brewery and operation sense. Like, did you guys have a fermenter that was a pain in the ass that you're like, God damn it, if we could just get a new one of these, it'd make our life better?
I mean, literally happened 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
So
yeah,
no,
like Walking on Sunshine was playing, and you kept coming out into different outfits. It was like, how do I look? And he's like, thumbs down, and then thumbs up. Yeah.
How would I look
but
with this
I'd
barrel?
say, Nathan, with the with CBA coming in, it already happened a little bit with the Rolex. That's like a expensive piece of equipment that's specifically designed to make the most out of your hops. Like it shears the hop pellets apart so that you get more flavor out of it. And we were like, guys, we need one of these. And I mean, it was a little bit more involved than that. Nathan had to argue for a few months, but then, it showed up and we started using it. And we're like, man, this is amazing. Like, this is taking our already silver medal winning IPA. And we're going for gold now,
I can only speak to, I was working at Midtown Grill, and that restaurant is an older restaurant. It's like a really old restaurant as far as it wasn't always Midtown. It was Cappers. It was a jazz club for a long time. But it had been a restaurant for a long time. So there are, cracks in here and there. And there's just little things that are like, man, it'd be nice. That said, I went directly from there to Standard Foods, where the kitchen was unfreaking believable because Scott Crawford designed it, and there was anything you'd want as a chef was there. Like a goddamn blast chiller and a Paco jet and just crazy equipment. So then I'm looking at Eric Montagny, the chef there, and it's just like, what do you need, man? He's like, I don't need anything, man. Like, this place is just, this is a Ferrari. Like, you could do anything you want here. And he did. And both chefs, Eric and Crawford, made crazy food there. So I can only speak to that connection, but I have to think that you guys from CBA to Anheuser Busch have upgraded your facilities to the point where now making beer, there's you don't have the same obstacles that you might have had in the beginning with your original setup.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, man. For the past 6 years out of Boone, we've been literally loading a 20-barrel bright tank on the back of a Ford F-250 at 7 a.m. in the morning, pumping beer on the back of that thing, driving it across town to our other packaging location and canning and doing all that stuff. So we've been doing old school German model tankering for the past 6 years, to say that, and we actually just, we're under construction at the pub right now. We actually will be done, tomorrow or Thursday. And so we have, upgraded our facilities. We're really stoked about that, but, man, talk about, a long time of having difficulties and refining our process. I'm really excited for what's to come next. And I think that, from everything that Walt has said, and I know him really well, and from what AB has shown us, we're still going to be driving the business. We're still going to be making the decisions. So really excited to help grow the business and help hone our craft even more.
Yeah. Well, like we said, this literally just happened 2 weeks ago, I think. It was actually, Walt had just gotten off the phone, and he was stoked about the whole agreement right before we got on the mics, and we were just chatting before we turned on the mic. So
we had breaking news, but we weren't allowed
to say it then. But we did say that it's synergy because you guys were coming on soon. So hopefully you guys will get the tanker off the 250 and just be able to have it in your facility and not go back and forth with it.
Yeah, no, it's already done. Nice. That transition is made. Yeah, we've already left that show.
So because you've already, effectively the company was sold a few years back and then now kind of transferred again, I have to imagine that this sell is probably not as affecting as far as the way you felt when you went from having it be your own business to then selling to somebody and then being an employee of the business. Even though you're an employee, you're still making your decisions and all, but maybe even just speak to the original sale to CBA. How was that? And has it been a decent adjustment where you're like, okay, we're not the guys that make the final decisions on this brand any longer when it comes to the distribution side and comes to the big numbers or the big picture, but has that affected anything when it comes to stylistically or even just your day-to-day workflow?
As far as the two mergers go, I would always say it's that image of there's always a bigger fish, Yeah. We were a small fish and we got, merged with CBA and we were like, oh my gosh, they're brewing a 350 barrel system in Portland. And then 2 years later, this next deal happened. But, I think, as far as the day to day in Boone goes, not too much has changed and we're still driving a lot of that innovation, that low and hazy that is your guys are enjoying now came out of us, post merger. That was a beer that kind of had its roots before then, but that we really dialed in, after that happened. And, as far as the brand goes, I mean, I think we still do make a lot of decisions. And so, people always think that, this is always taken out of your hands, but really the reason that TBA was interested and AV was interested in TBA is because of how successful we've been and how great the brand is and how great the liquid is. I mean, that stuff that's not going to change. And, I'll let Nathan expand a little bit more on that if he wants to, but I'm really interested in seeing how this goes because I think we're going to get just even more help now.
Yeah, nobody can take away your proprietary innovation or information or know-how. So,
well, and let's be honest, like whether it's CBA or Anheuser Busch or any of these companies, like the last thing they wanted to do was deal with a bunch of operational bullshit. They're like, no, we're buying you because we like what you're doing. We want you to keep doing that. We don't want to come in here and like figure out how to reinvent your brand. It's like, no. Do what you're doing. We just want to
profit from it.
We want to profit from it. Yeah. We want to cash in a little bit. And also because we know how to expand and drive business on a higher level, our profits are going to come from the increase of what we do with you guys rather than just being complacent with where your company is at the moment. Like, I have to imagine that it's like, let's grow this thing. Let's make it bigger. And like I said to Walt when we were talking about Wicked Weed 2 weeks ago, the end user is the one that wins. I mean, we can. There's a part of it that I didn't get into, and I want to ask this question of you guys. But leading up to that question, I had just mentioned I'd go to like the local BP gas station on my way home from work at the end of a night over at Y Hill. I'm like, all right, I'm going to get myself a 6-pack of something. And it used to be that when I'd go into a said gas station, I'd be able to only get a Miller or a Bud Light or so, or maybe a Corona. And now you can go in there and get Pernicious, and now you can go in there and get Longleaf IPA. Whereas like these selections are so much better and so much more ubiquitous in the market. And so the end user, the beer drinker, gets to win because now you have better beer more accessibly at places. My question, though, is your mission statement, as I look on your website, the last sentence is, our mission is simple: sustainability, community, and philanthropy. So with those 3 words, how has that affected your business now being a part of a larger company? And are you still able to get into your community and do the things that you once did when you first started?
Man, I'm really glad you asked that question because I think it's even, our ability to give back and what we stand by is even more now than when we started. Last year, I think we planted something around like 40,000 longleaf pines from being able to, and we were working with, the bee downtown to help, restore, bee cultures in cities throughout. I mean, I think that the local impact that we can have to, support the local nonprofit communities that we've done from day one is continued. Our sustainability efforts. I mean, if you look up, there are, commitments from AB and beyond to be actual leaders in the industry to be, to brew on a zero carbon net footprint. I mean, that's where the real change happens, when these big guys start, taking on the ethos and the culture of all the breweries that they're, taking on, and, we're affecting that smaller change, at least for us, but at the larger scale, I think it's going to be even more impactful. So I couldn't be more excited of what we're going to be able to do for our local communities and beyond, in the future. I'm really stoked.
That's pretty impressive. 40,000 trees you planted. Yeah. That's wow.
Kevin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'll go back. One thing we said earlier too. When we joined CBA, and this is something a lot of people don't think about. And Max, I said something to you about this the other day when we called up. But our staff at the brewery, and Nathan and Chris can speak to this more, they had benefits for the first time. They had 401k, they had health insurance. Yeah. And that's something a lot of people don't think about, particularly for, as you guys well know, and Zach, the service industry. I mean, how many people in the service industry get that opportunity to even have employee provided health insurance,
extremely difficult.
401k, stuff like that, PTO. So, that was huge, and it's allowed us, and again, Nathan and Chris speak up, that's allowed us to maintain a lot of staff in an industry that sees constant turnover.
Yeah.
You guys, again, go back to you guys know that just as well as anyone else. So that is an often overlooked aspect of joining a bigger company. And sure, are there things that end up being not quite as awesome maybe in some respects? Sure, but you have to weigh the costs and the benefits of any kind of business transaction.
The biggest negative, and let's just say right here, is that this is a Brazilian Belgian owned company, right? AB InBev.
Yep.
So there is a portion of profits that will not see North Carolina's bottom line. You know that it's going to go out of the state. It's going to go somewhere else. But that also doesn't mean that because they're so big and because they need AMB, Appalachian Mountain Brewing, to be a successful company on its own right, I would at least think that there's enough in the business, especially with the expansion and what Anheuser Busch does to AMB is grow it to the point where even what they're taking off the top, let's say, is only based off of what they were doing to improve the sales of the business. So in an altruistic sense, maybe all that money isn't really going away. They're just making more of it, and it's being dispersed worldwide.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
and they're increasing their revenue to what it far surpassed what it was before. So they're actually bringing more money. And then if you think about what you said about the employees are getting more money in their pockets because they're getting benefits, and then they have more money which they're going to spend locally.
Then they're buying. They're going to the local restaurants in Boone and helping them out because you can't.
I want to get to that before we get out of here.
Yeah.
So, guys, we didn't really talk too much about Boone. We talked about some of the things you're doing there, but can you just be our guides through there for a few minutes? I guess mainly where would be the best places to go drink A and B stuff, and what food does it pair with? So take us down that scope in Boone if we were traveling.
In Boone in particular, man, you got the boys over at the Cardinal who are always slinging the freshest burgers around. You can definitely find our porter there this time of year. I think that the Boone scene is an awesome one. I would say we don't have a plethora of restaurants as you guys do down there, but I think the quality is definitely there. Kobo Sushi is a big favorite of mine. Black Cat is a big supporter. Those big fat burritos.
Zach is shaking his head yes, and agreeing with everything that you're saying right now as a local college kid from the time. Yeah.
I've spent thousands of dollars at Black Cat, so I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Big question is,
Chris, what are some of your favorites? Yeah.
Which city has more beards per capita, Asheville or Boone?
Ooh.
Boone for sure.
Boone for sure.
I would say probably Boone for sure too.
Kevin, by the way, sports the greatest beard that has ever been in this studio, hands down. He's got it's such a beard that he literally has a tie pulling it all together. That's only about a foot lower than his chin.
It hasn't been trimmed since before COVID, so
it's quite a beard, my friend.
Well, if you guys could see Nathan on Zoom, Nathan and I have been battling. We've been having the beard battle from the beginning, and
Chris.
Or Chris, sorry, and Nathan goes back and forth. He'll let it grow out, then he's like, "I'm going to shave it," and then he realizes he's like, "Oh, I should grow this thing out again." So,
but going back to Boone, there's a lot of outdoor activity as well. I imagine just some of the best hiking you can do.
Leaf season is in full swing up here right now.
Yeah.
So it is particularly beautiful, and there's the Blue Ridge Parkway up here. Nathan just rode from Asheville to Boone. I think last weekend, Nathan?
Yeah, I rode on the Parkway from Asheville to Boone. That was pretty crazy.
Wait, what were you riding?
I rode with a road bike. I rode on a road bike. The boys at Fonta Flora, Todd. I rode with Todd Boera, and Obi. So we got on our bikes in Asheville and rode up. It was awesome. They did the whole Parkway. I only did 2 days, but they did the whole Parkway. That was crazy.
That's fantastic, man.
There's definitely a ton of great outdoors for sure.
Yeah, do you guys mind if I give 2 plugs real quick?
Please do.
So Longleaf Alliance, Nathan touched on this a little bit. Yeah, we partnered with the Longleaf Alliance for now going on 3 years. We planted tens of thousands of trees. We've planted some locally here in Wake County. We had a planting day again back in February. Actually, it was early March. I'm not sure with COVID how that's gonna shake out next year, but the planting season for longleaf pines is actually the winter. So to give the roots enough time to get to really get into the ground and to be able to survive the hot summers that we have. So every case of longleaf that is sold, we definitely donate some of that back to the Longleaf Alliance. And then Boone Creek Blonde. So that is a beer that we obviously all love, and we partnered with Be Downtown, which for those of you here in Wake County, a lot of you may have heard of Lee Catherine Bonner and her company Be Downtown. She's a graduate of NC State. Go Pack! I've bled red and white since I was about 5.
Whatever, Kevin.
So Chris and I love talking about State versus Carolina.
We're talking football. You know, the Raiders just beat the Chiefs this week, right?
You see, the funny thing is,
that's the biggest thing, the biggest story of the
any year outside this year, Chris would not want to talk football at all. But of course, whatever.
Finally,
trust me,
I'm not totally embarrassed.
Yeah, I'll still talk about it. But anyway, but Be Downtown has been great. We have 2 hives, one in Raleigh here at the Art Museum, one in Durham over off Gear Street. So we have 2 hives.
Oh, that's cool.
They actually just harvest the honey for this season. I did an Instagram live event with those guys actually at our hive at the Art Museum just a few weeks ago. So you guys go to Be Downtown's Instagram page. I forgot the name of their Instagram. Is probably at Be Downtown or something to that effect. But go check it out. But yeah, those guys are doing a lot of great stuff. Really trying to increase the bee population, and it's again the community sustainability and philanthropy. We definitely take it seriously, and it's something that has been part of us from the beginning. And we, again, to your point, Max, none of these programs are going away now that we're with AB.
See, that's fantastic. I mean, there's always a knee-jerk reaction, and you always, you see this brewery's sold out, bro. It's sold out. It's like, no. They did such a good job. They got the attention of a massive company that wanted to endorse what they're doing and continue to do it. Because even those massive companies aren't trying to, contrary to most belief, they're not trying to be an evil dictatorship. They're just trying to make more money. And so if that is considered evil, well, that's your own. You got to deal with that internal turmoil. That's what a business does. A business only exists to be profitable. But while doing that, it's all for the business. Like, if you do things for the community and help support the community, then the community endorses you more and makes you more profitable.
That's right.
So it's okay. It's okay. Like, that's the whole. It's a scorpion stings and a business makes money. Like, that's the way you got to look at it. But how you do it is what separates you, And so it sounds like
you can
the partnership
still have ethics in business.
Yeah,
also.
It sounds like the partnership is great, and it sounds like you guys are setting yourself up for success. I know we're running really long right now. I said it would be like a 45-minute show, and we're already at 66 minutes. We did just pop. I mean, wow. We had the Cloud Pleaser Juicy IPA, which I just said screw it, and I just poured myself a second helping because it's fantastic. It's the Tropical Juicy IPA. We could get deep into it, but I'm just going to tell you all to go to a shop, perhaps the Triangle Wine Company.
Yes. What a great idea.
Right, because if you went to the Triangle Wine Company at one of their 4 locations, whether it's in Southern Pines, Morrisville, Cary, or where's the other one tucked in?
Right in Holly Springs.
That's right, where Matt lives. You can go and you can get whatever wines you're looking for, whatever beers you're looking for. You can even get fantastic bar supplies that I always get. You can get some great bitters or some vermouths. And guess what? There's curbside delivery. There's the curbside pickup and delivery. So for those that are concerned about heading outside, they got you covered. Go to trianglewineco.com, and guess what? We got you covered. You get an NCFB promo code that you can use, and you'll get a fantastic little discount because the gents over there and the gents over here, we love each other. We love each other.
We like to work together and support the type of businesses that you were talking about before.
Exactly.
And as a matter of fact, for you North Raleighans, they are opening probably at the end of October, maybe early November, a new shop up there, so you can go get your curbside delivery up there as well.
Yeah, and make sure that while you are there or at a Lowe's or Harris Teeter across the entire state, I bet even in Boone, where you got a Lowe's or a Harris Teeter in Boone. I would assume so, yes.
Yeah, both.
Yeah. Well, if you go to the beer and wine section out there, you will notice a bright red freezer that says Proof Alcohol Ice Cream on it, and that is what we were talking about. Proof Alcohol Ice Cream helps you think differently about dessert. There is 7% ABV in each pint of ice cream, and whereas it doesn't travel so well in the mail unless we put it in a big freezer pack, we're going to end up having to give it to Kevin and Zach, who are in studio.
They're going to be the recipients.
And they're going to report back to how delicious it is. Right now, you can get pumpkin spiced ice cream. You can get apple pie ice cream, coconut rum, bourbon caramel, fantastic flavors, all at Triangle Wine Company or the aforementioned Harris Teeter and Lowe's all across the state. So check them out, proofalcoholicecream.com. And, I mean, guys, we could go on and on. We didn't even get into the ciders that you're making. You're making fantastic cider. That is like a whole other conversation. I think the next time we do this, though, Matt and I just need to be in Boone, and we do an on location. Maybe we'll have Zach, take us up there, and we'll go to all of his old drinking haunts, and which are probably a lot. It sounds like an extensive amount.
Well, the trailer bars were definitely a place we went. So I don't even know if they're still open. But we'll definitely go over there.
Oh yeah, full swinging, man, full swinging.
Oh, yeah.
Swinging. Well, gents, thank you so much again for being on. Matt, you got anything else before we get out of here?
Thank you, guys. Thanks for these great beers and all the great things you're doing for your community. For those of you out there that are thirsty, go get yourself some Appalachian Mountain Brewery beer.
There
and
we
you
go.
will drink
There we go.
Thanks for the hospitality, guys.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.